I think that sounds alright.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Millennial Money Mindset. I'm here with Neil Doig, who's talked you through some guiding principles on how you can start investing, why you should be investing, 5 tips to make, 5 mistakes people make, all about money and investments. But we did touch on how money is such an integral and important part of our mental health sometimes. So, mental health and money wealth. This episode, we're going to talk about how you can stop worrying about money through, obviously, following some key principles. So, Neil, in terms of money, why do people worry so much about it?
Yeah, I mean, money worries tops the poll. There was a poll done recently about the biggest cause of stress and worry about with millennials, and money worries topped that poll. So it's, you going out on the street, you're speaking to people, and it definitely, there's lots of kind of people worried about money.
And how are people worried about money? It's not just literally what's in their purse or their wallet. It's more than that. It's like house prices and the cost of living.
Yeah.
How can people become more adverse to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not our fault. I mean, I'm a millennial as well, and money it can be a worry for me as well. We're not taught this stuff at school, and we kind of, even at university, we're not really taught that. And we're kind of bombarded with a lot of information that's not, we don't know if it's right or wrong, or it's a lot of kind of worried people out there. So, and there's simple tips that you can do that will essentially reduce that anxiety and that kind of that stress around money. So
what would be the first tip you'd give people if they're feeling stressed about their money worries around now?
Yeah, well, there's lots of things like paying yourself first, having that emergency fund really just covers. You don't even have to think about money anymore. Paying yourself first, starting off, getting that cash buffer, so if anything does happen, then you're kind of covered for the worst things.
So those worst things are essentially you lose your job, or your landlord puts up the rent, or interest rates go higher.
So and another thing is interest rates. You mentioned that's quite a good thing, which is kind of a worry for millennials, particularly. Interest rates have been low for so long, like they're not getting a return on the bank. So you go into a bank, you're getting less than 1%, and in the inflation, kind of the worth of £1 in your pocket is kind of being eroded. So that's stressful as well, because people are essentially thinking they're doing all the right things, putting money away, saving up, but then that money's not growing. And even 10, 20 years ago, interest rates used to be 5-6%, and it was much more an incentive for people to invest. So it's quite difficult to kind of encourage kids to that kind of saving principles, because you're not getting that the kind of return.
Because you're barely getting that compound interest that we spoke about in previous episodes.
Exactly.
Because the interest rates are so low now.
Yeah.
And like we said, you have to do the research in order to do the actual investing. And we've already talked about many different books and your own book that's giving people that research. But then, if someone's done the reading and they're still worried, they're fearful of starting, like we talked about, what piece of advice would you give them to alleviate their fears?
We can understand why they are fearful there. I mean, with the financial crash, and even things like Brexit and kind of Trump coming in, and kind of, all these kind of things that you hear in the media. I think the media is quite up there to blame as well. Like I mean, they're there to sell papers, they're there to sell advertising space, so they almost kind of heighten the kind of the frenzy. People read the front page of the newspaper. It's kind of it's almost like scare tactics to get them to read it. So we're kind of, and I think it's almost like both kind of instant access to anything. Like you have, you can look at everyone has a phone in their pocket, like social media, and kind of that people post things on social media, and it's kind of. Do you think it's the case where, because of the nature of millennials, we've grown up with technology, we've grown up with the microwave, we've grown up with instant messaging, the time it used to take to cook some dinner or to write a letter was the time that would also transfer into investing and waiting for the long-term return. Because we're used to everything happening so fast, we want everything to be short-term. So we're more adverse to not investing, because we think, well, how's my money going to grow in a month or a week rather than 2 to 3 years? Yeah, exactly. So it's that long-term mindset. So long-term thinking. We're in a kind of instant gratification kind of world. It's not our fault. That's just the way we are. Like everything, like you can any of these books, like you can click on Amazon and get them tomorrow. Like it's kind of, we live in this kind of instant culture. So to kind of tell people in 20 years time you're going to be better off than you are today, like it's quite a long way away. And we as humans, we've kind of evolved not even to think about it. Because you know, when we were kind of when we were first started, if you said you know, people didn't live, and if you're looking at 100,000 years ago, whenever we evolved, we didn't have to live that long. But now it's quite normal for us to live to 70, 80, 90 years old. So we have to kind of provide for ourselves for our 70-year-old self, if that makes sense. So
I think, like, one of the points we're talking about in terms of worrying, the worrying is realizing that you're not going to be 25 to 35 forever. At some point you're going to get to 65, and how are you going to live? And that's where the advice in your book comes in, where if you invest now, it's going to make your life a lot easier in the future.
Yeah, exactly. So doing the right things today will help you guide your future. And there's also other things, like even like I know we laugh about how pension system is the easiest way to get thrown out of a house party is to start talking about pensions. But there are things like in the past you'd have like the state you'd have a higher state pension, so you'd have that kind of safety net in retirement, or you'd have your company pension, so what they call final salary pensions or DB pensions. These are kind of where the company would kind of pay you an income in retirement. You would have it was much more common for these companies to look after you for when you do retire. But now, I mean, these kind of schemes are kind of few and far between, so you have to kind of look after yourself, so to speak. So
also, is it that not also an element of fear, because you might work for a company that disappears before you even get to the age? And then your pension, does that sometimes disappear with it, or? So
pensions can be quite complex, but just think of yourself. So what we talk about, the defined contribution pensions, which are the most common pensions today, especially for millennials. Just think of it like a piggy bank. So you put money into that piggy bank and that grows over time. So it's essentially the same thing. Because people are like, a lot of people I speak to, they don't even see what's the point of saving, because they're not getting anything in return from their interest. They're not doing that first step, so not putting money away, getting out to that habit of kind of putting money away for when they stop working. So it's a kind of a combination of all these things have led to kind of poor money or a mindset that we can work to improve on.
So then why is having good money mindset what most people need to be working towards? How can it start alleviate some of these mental difficulties?
I mean, talk to a lot about paying yourself first and setting up automation into your savings. So setting up a standing order in your bank account. So as soon as you get paid, that 10% goes off, or even more, like 10 to up to 20% of that goes off into an emergency fund. You don't have to think about it. Like these kind of steps. Like the first time I had an emergency buffer for 3 months, I was like, wow, this is, things. It was kind of quite an epiphany for me, where you can actually have these. Things can happen and it's not going to be the end of the world. Whereas if you didn't have that cash buffer, there's only a few small things, kind of these domino effects that can happen that can kind of knock you off down a path.
Yeah, because they always say that, especially in London or big cities, most people are 1 to 2 paychecks away from being homeless.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If you were to lose your job for whatever reason, if you had that emergency fund, that 1 to 2 paychecks becomes 3 to 4, and then you can start looking for a job. But if you're not thinking long term, you're thinking your world's going to stay exactly the same forever, then everything hits you with a shock, and that can be your impact in your mental health as well as your finances.
So I think of there's a guy called Maslow. People talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you've got like your basic needs moving up to kind of higher needs. I think money should be up there with kind of your basic needs of like food, water, shelter. If you don't have, like you say, that was a great point with a few paychecks away from homelessness. If you don't have that kind of cash buffer that's going to look after you if anything goes wrong, then it's quite easy. These knock-on effects can really have impact on people's mental health, and it's all causing stress and especially for millennials today.
Also, in terms of, to break it down in terms of gender, one of the big talking points is around male identity, and a lot of men feel like they still need to be providers for their family, but increasingly they're earning less money in comparison to maybe their partner, or generally they just can't afford to have that many children that they're having. So investing wise is how you can start laying seeds, I guess, to be able to feed your family if we carry on the seed analogy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it is doing the simple things today that's going to pay off for you in the future. But it's like that, coming back to that instant gratification. When if I go to the supermarket hungry, then I'm more likely to buy the chocolate bar, or rather than having kind of a nutritious, balanced meal that's going to serve me long term. It's kind of trying to picture yourself in the future and knowing how the human brain works, and kind of working around that and kind of giving yourself the best chance to for your future.
Also, it's a good rich dad poor dad example in terms of a lot of people, regardless of age, you could be 25, you could be 20. One day they're thinking, actually, I want to have children. Now, you might not be in a position to have children, but if you're in your mind thinking that you want to have children, maybe start investing for those children that aren't here yet, rather than it being a surprise that you're not ready for financially or emotionally.
So that's a great example. So you can actually take more risk the younger you are, because there's more kind of the ups and downs of the market you can ride out. So if you're investing for your children, you can it's almost counterintuitive, it almost doesn't make sense, but you can invest kind of in riskier, kind of smaller companies or kind of growing emerging markets for your children. That's going to, when they retire in 50 years' time, it's had all that time to kind of grow and kind of move the ups and downs of the market, rather than it's kind of the classic example where your grand buys you premium bond, which is kind of a safe option, but it's kind of almost like the completely wrong thing to do. It's really understanding how markets work and how different assets kind of work with each other to improve your money mindset.
Yeah, one of the things that me and my friend was talking about if you're a parent or you're a would-be parent, try and make sure your children can inherit your wealth rather than your debt.
Yeah,
and that means both knowledge-wise and financially. You're laying a foundation so when they turn 18 and they want to start a business, they don't have to necessarily go to the bank, because you've actually, for 18 years, I've been saving and investing for you. Here's your little fund, let's do some research, see what we can do.
Yeah, perfect. But then it kind of brings on to rebalance. So the last kind of point, with the last 5-step method is rebalancing. So it's all about having kind of that balance in your life. So kind of mind, body and soul, to have that kind of balance. But rebalance, it's the most complicated of the 5 steps to explain, but it's also the most important. So it reminds me of, if I go to a party, for instance, my girlfriend at the time, last week, she would say, Neil, we need to leave at the height of the party, 11:45. Like, why? And I was like, why are we leaving now? The drinks are flowing, everyone's having a good time. But by leaving that party early, it meant we'd catch the last train home, wake up the next morning productive, and kind of actually do something with our day. When I call my mate, he's gone to stayed at the party, maybe gone to somewhere else, and kind of there's a kind of a pile, as the kind of lights turn on at the end of the night, there's kind of a pile to the end of the market, or the end of the party, sorry, which is similar to like the markets. Everyone, if there is a crash, everyone kind of piles out the market, and it's that loss aversion kind of kicking in. But if you systematically rebalance, so you kind of set up automatically where every year you rebalance your assets to put your assets back into the football formation that's right for you, then that's one way to really grow your portfolio without even thinking about doing it. It's all, so like we say, the best thing to do is kind of make it as easy as possible for the listeners and the viewers to make it as easy as possible. And by systematically rebalance, you can do this automatically, and it's one of the most powerful things you can do.
So Neil already touched on that, was the last chapter that we spoke about from his book. But in our next episode, we're literally going to talk all the episode about his book. But from our other chapters, we've broken down all the 5 points that he kind of gives you some advice. But make sure you get the book, make sure you listen to the next episode / watch the next episode, and you're going to get all the information and guidance you need to maybe start investing, or at least thinking about your future. So once again, make sure you can follow us on social media. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again another day.
Thank you.
Money Mindset.
I think that sounds alright.